Welcome to another very special Turnbuckle Trash Talk interview. I am here with one of my favorite wrestlers on the scene, Leon Scott. Something about what you do just calls to the old school mentality of wrestling. Like, you come out with this great attire, you have this larger than life persona, and I mean, physically, you represent straight as a pun, the golden era of wrestling, because we are here in Summerfield, Florida, golden era wrestling. So let's go back to the very beginning. What made you want to get into wrestling, or what even made you a fan of wrestling? When did it all start?
My dad used to be really into wrestling when I was very, very little, like probably 3 or 4 years old. And so we watched wrestling together. And, you know, like anything, if your dad's really into it, you're really into it. So that's where it really started. But then it started to catch a groove for me probably in the mid-'80s when we were in such a really golden period of wrestling. And it caught on, and I really never stopped watching wrestling. And my dad has long since stopped being a fan. It's probably like 30 years now. But it stuck with me the entire time. So, you know, I think probably somewhere around 12 or 13 years old is when I started thinking about how, oh man, I want to be a wrestler when I grow up. I didn't care about any like normal professions. You know, I wanted to be a wrestler.
Was there a particular act that you found yourself connecting to right off, or an inspiration that made Leon Scott what he is? Like, where did you draw your inspiration from?
I was always a big fan of the Road Warriors and super into Mad Max and really any post-apocalyptic movies. So, you know, and I didn't always do this, you know, look. It's sort of a more of the last few years, but, you know, I really always dug that. And so I wanted to do something that I thought was different, you know, a different take on that, you know, Road Warriors, Mad Max look that so many guys in the 80s and 90s did. So I wanted to instead do it more realistic and you know, I do costuming as well. So I wanted to put behind some of the things I had learned doing costuming, you know, to make a look that looked more authentic, more, you know, film quality than just like regular wrestling gear. And so that's kind of where it came from.
Well, an adaptation and evolution are such an important thing in staying relevant in this profession. So what have you done that has like been the biggest challenge in wrestling? What have you found was the hardest thing to learn, or the hardest thing to do, or the hardest thing to overcome when you were getting into wrestling?
I think it was, you know, learning how to be able to understand a crowd and how to work a match that makes sense, and to understand match mechanics and how to put together something that's good quality, not just going out there and doing moves and not having a story built behind it, understanding what you were trying to portray and what it is that you want to express in the match, and then being able to build the match around those themes or those ideas. And so I think those are the kind of things that take time to learn, and some people don't ever learn that, and I'm not trying to say that I'm the best at doing that, but I enjoy the story aspects of wrestling, and, you know, what you can tell in the ring, there's a lot of value to that. And so being able to learn that, I think, is something that takes experience and some know-how that can come with, you know, years of doing it that not everyone ever learns. So, you know, I think that's the biggest challenge that anyone in wrestling faces, is being able to figure out how to tell that story.
Well, and I think that wrestling lately has fallen into this trap, especially on the indies, of lacking characters, really well-defined, larger-than-life characters from that 80s era, you know, that we all became fans of. Now it's just, I've got my name on my tights and I'm me. Like, I talk to a lot of guys, I'm just me turned up to 11, and I'm like, okay, who are you? Like, what makes you different from the other guy who's them turned up to 11? Yeah. So it's really cool to see you a more defined character. Like, you come out and you've got one of those looks that everybody knows what you're going for as soon as you step through the curtain. So you decide you want to become a wrestler around 13 or 14. What next? What steps did you take to finding a trainer, getting trained? How did you get into it?
I actually it was dumb luck. You know, I knew there were wrestling schools, and at the time that I was getting into wrestling, you know, which is now like over 18 years ago, and so there were schools, and I knew that they existed, but I didn't know where they were. And so a friend of mine, he called me and said, hey, you know, there's a wrestling school that I found out about, and I went there, you know, last couple of weeks, and, you know, you should come and show up. And it was in Mascot, Florida, which is way out in the middle of nowhere, like probably 40 minutes from Orlando. And we get there, the ring is under an auto tent, which only covers 3 corners of the ring. So one corner of the ring is always wet. The mat is dirty. It's in the dirt itself. It's not even on like a concrete slab. It's literally in sand. And we ran through drills and stuff and, normal wrestling class kind of stuff. Wrestling class is ending, and in walks this guy, Rey Ayala, who, I'll say some more details about him in a second because I don't want to give away the end of the story. So Rey walks in, and, he's this fire plug, like squat dude, not super tall, not super built, but like, definitely a thick, like formidable looking guy. But so he talks with the trainer there a little bit, and so I didn't think they really bought that he was a wrestler, but he was a wrestler, and so, or he is a wrestler rather. So he talks to them a little bit, and they put them in there with their best guy, like super in shape, like 6'3" guy, and he proceeds to just light this dude up and blows him up hard, finishes him with a BT bomb after like 3 different suplex variations that he hit. And I was like, I don't know who that guy is, but I want to know who that dude is because he knows what I need to know to get into wrestling. And so I started talking to him, and he took me under his wing, and he personally trained me, and we spent many nights just grinding out in that ring. Like after everybody else left the wrestling class, he would teach me personally, me and another friend of mine, Joe. And so like that's how I got into the business. Is I got broken in by just dumb luck, meeting a guy like Ray, who was trained at the Malenko school and who had a good pedigree and had worked WCW, on WCW Saturday nights and Harlem Heat and a bunch of other guys. And so I got super lucky that I happened to show up on the right day at the right place and met a guy who had a good background, who could really teach me good fundamentals and the kind of stuff that wrestling schools don't always teach you. So,
what do you remember most about your first match? Some guys have told some stories how they were scared to death. One guy said he even pooped his pants in his first match. What do you remember most about yours? Who were you facing? What was the venue like? Everything like that.
I have a vague memory of it. It was at that same school. They had a church there, and so they would actually hold shows in this dirt pit under this auto tent. And I don't remember who I wrestled. It was a tag match. God, it was so bad. I had white pants, and I thought it would be cool if the pants had like streamer fringe on them that was like reflective. It wasn't. It was a terrible idea because they got caught on everything, and I was an idiot. So we get done with the match, and like a guy totally unannounced comes out and like beats the shit out of me and power bombs me. I had no idea what was happening. So that's what I remember most about it, is that fucking asshole coming out and doing that shit. Ray got super pissed off at that guy. It was a whole thing, but like, but no, but going back to more normal answer, I guess. I was nervous, everyone's nervous, and I felt like I didn't know what I was doing, and and I mean, I think the first 2-3 years last like that, and then we're always, if you don't have some kind of nerves before working matches, you don't have, I think, a dedication to wanting to do good and wanting to do better and wanting to impress and leave memories with people and make an impression. So, I mean, I think it's normal to feel that way, and at the time, yeah, I was pretty damn nervous.
Do you have a favorite opponent, someone you particularly like working with? It doesn't have to be one person. It could be a couple of different guys. But you work such a monstrous style that it seems like it could lend itself to working with someone smaller or working with someone at the same size or bigger. Who are your favorite people to work with?
There's quite a lot of different people that I really enjoy working. Me and a guy, Ray Bees, from back in the day, used to have a lot of great matches. We worked all over the place. I had a lot of fun working with Effie, and I think we executed a really interesting story. Love working Beastly is another guy who I always enjoy having matches with. There's so many. It's hard for me to pin down someone that's like my favorite opponent because I have so many different people that I like working with, and then there's new people added all the time. Like I just recently worked my tag partner for the first time. We've never had a match against one another, and it was a strong match, and you know, I'm really looking forward to us doing more together because it just really came off well. It's perfect chemistry, you know, good story. So, you know, I mean, the nice part about wrestling nowadays is that there's so many people in the business, and everyone is such a higher talent, I think, than when I started. You know, by and large, that you end up with tons of people who are your favorite opponents. I mean, the Ugly Ducklings, the Gymnasties when we were tagging, another couple of guys that are just like incredibly good head for, you know, match construction and creating excitement and understanding, you know, how to interact with the crowd. I mean, I think the quality of people has increased so much that now it's hard to nail down who your favorite opponents are.
Well, and you had an absolutely killer match with Sideshow at IPW. I was fortunate enough to ref that match, and that was very, very good. So, a lot of younger wrestlers are kind of getting stuck in the not sure where to go next moment of they're stuck in a promotion or they're stuck in Florida. What kind of advice would you give to the younger generation for getting out there, getting out of state, putting your name out? I mean, other guys have talked about the importance of social media or the importance of reaching out to promoters. What advice would you give them?
I would echo those thoughts, but I would take it a little further, and I think it's pretty standard advice nowadays. You got to network, you got to make yourself known, you know, get out there and meet people, be willing to put in the miles, even if you're not booked. If you're not booked on a weekend and you have nothing else that you're doing, get a hold of your friends who you know who are booked. Be willing to get in a car, throw them a little gas money, you know, take a trip out of state, take a trip, you know, down south and even in the same state you're in, you know, figure out where you'd like to work and who you'd like to work with, and start meeting people, because this business is a ton about networking. I would say that most of the opportunities that I've ever received have been entirely off of somebody that I knew making mention of my name, or putting in a good word for me, or letting me know that, you know, they were looking for somebody who I would fit the mold for. And you know, that's really what it's all about, is it's a networking business. And I mean, there's tons of other things, defining yourself, deciding how you want to present, and putting content out there that's around that. I mean, I think now we're beginning to see the influence of the 80s and 90s on people who are coming in and picking up steam now. They're creating their own content. They don't have TV time to show people who they are, so they're producing stuff that's quality, that seems very professional, with nothing behind it but their own talent. And so you're seeing people like Joey Ryan and Effie and the Ducks and the Gymnasty Boys, and Treehouse Lee is another guy who is just like, you know, and Saeed Al Sabah. There's guys who are producing content by themselves, and it's simple stuff, you know, but it's effective at defining who they're supposed to be. And so when people see them, they already have context for what they are, and that is a huge tool right now. So, you know, deciding what you want to be and then building things around that are really what I think are the keys in modern wrestling to doing that.
Well, and on a wrestling show, you only get, if you're lucky, 6 to 12 minutes to tell everyone in the audience who you are. So I think that we do have this amazing tool that I don't see people use enough, but those that use it really, really well in social media. So what's the furthest you've traveled, and can you think of any particularly funny or interesting or intense road stories you'd like to share?
The furthest I've traveled, I've been to South America and I've been to Canada. Those are probably distance-wise the furthest ones away. I'm going to choose Canada because when we went to Canada, it was a 2-week tour. We worked a number of different indies while we were up there, and we were in a bus. But it was like an old school bus, and it's Canada, and it's in November, so it's extremely cold. And it's so cold that the only place where the heat actually is, you can even feel it, is if you're in like the first 2 seats. Everything behind that is incredibly cold. So the entire bus is every wrestler and a couple of referees as well, crammed into the front of the bus, huddling one another, literally up against one another, just for warmth so that we don't die on our way to the next town. Meanwhile, of course, it's snowing, all the streets are icy, and it was just, that part of it was absolutely miserable. The rest of it was completely awesome. So you toughed out those, you know, crazy road moments of freezing to death, and then you got to the next place, and it was just an amazing experience.
So what's your goal in wrestling? I mean, a lot of people say I want to get signed, but that's not really as much of a long-term plan. Is there a dream opponent you have? Do you want to work for WWE, or would you prefer one of these new companies that's starting up? Even CZW, some guys are like all about getting into that. What is your long-term goal?
I think it's a combination of things. One, I mean, for me, I know that WWE isn't really a realistic goal that I'm trying to attain. I'm enjoying my place in the wrestling business now. I've been doing this for the better part of 18 years, and it's fun to do what I'm doing, and I'm getting to go other places, and I've spent a little bit of time on TV, and there's no doubt that I would certainly be willing to work any of the places that would be willing to use me and do something interesting with me. So there's that. But the other side of it is that I really enjoy working with people who are coming up and trying to do stuff. I've got Nerd Street Wrestling, which is a company that I'm helping put together, and we ran our first show and it's going well. And of course, Fest Wrestling is another one. But I'm looking to try to help younger folks who need a platform or who I just think are incredibly talented have more places to work and get to put together fun matches for them to do and see them get to enjoy themselves as well as entertain. I'm really big on the family aspect of things. There's talent out there that I think is incredibly good, and I want them to be seen more. And so if by my little bit of effort in that goal, like that's a goal for me, is that I want to try to get people to do more and give them more places to do that. So it's kind of multifaceted for me. Like I know that this isn't forever, like at this point I'm definitely looking at the other side of the hill. I've already rounded the top, but there's who knows. I certainly I just got done with a run in MLW, so there's certainly other things that I could do personally, but people that I'm close to in the business that I think are very talented, I want to try to do anything I can to get them more opportunities.
Well, would you have any interest in, perhaps after an in-ring career is over, being a trainer or being a promoter or a booker? Do those types of things appeal to you?
Yeah, and right now I'm doing a little bit of that with the companies that I'm involved with, and I enjoy booking. I enjoy coming up with stories and executing them and finding ways to make something different or more interesting. So yeah, I see that's where things will be going eventually, and I plan on expanding that more and more. I couldn't really see myself opening a school or being a trainer. I think there are certainly other people who are better suited than I am for that. But I can definitely see myself continuing to expand in the roles that I'm doing in the business side of wrestling, because I think that there's plenty to do there, and I enjoy it a lot, so I can see myself doing more of that.
Well, I think of you as one of the most unique performers on the stream, on the scene right now. But it's cool to hear that you're also so closely involved with Nerd Street and Fest, because along with promotions like Mayhem on Mills or Bar Wars or Punk Pro Wrestling, there's something unique about those promotions too. Of the dozens and dozens and dozens of promotions in Florida that open and close and all this kind of stuff, they seem to have a similar trend. So to see those promotions breaking out and saying, we're doing things differently, we're going to do things our way, and to see characters, I'm going to do things differently, I'm going to do things my own way. Talk a little bit more about the importance of being unique, and maybe if you have any advice for people in how they can find their own unique voice, maybe you could talk about that too.
Sure. I'm a big believer in setting yourself apart from others. I think that one of the things in wrestling that makes things very memorable is how much they stand out. And there's a reason why we still remember things like Mantar and the Goon, because despite the fact that they were only around for a short time, they're very memorable. A guy came out in a giant bullhead and ran around, horns knocking people over. It's memorable. It may be a small piece of memorable thing, but the more things are memorable like that, the more that people pay attention to them and they don't forget. And so one of the things that I think we have tried to do in Fest, and now as we're getting Nerd Street going, is creating an identity that's around that brand, and how does that brand work, and what tone do we want to, how do we want it to feel. And I think one of the things that we accomplish well in Fest is that it's very separate. You know, when Tony founded the Fest as a punk rock festival, you know, it was unique in its own. You know, there's tons of punk rock festivals now, but when he started it, there wasn't. And so it had its own unique feel, and we were able to build on that for the pro wrestling side of things, and take that crowd and truly create a punk rock wrestling show. And I think, you know, using that platform and then giving space for people of all different walks of life, all different backgrounds, you know, and making it a very inclusive, very progressive style of presentation, I think is what modern wrestling is becoming. I think it's becoming more of an open business. And so I think we are able to set ourselves apart by doing that. And as a result, it's a presentation that I think has got its own identity, which is, to me, how you make people remember and connect with things in pro wrestling, or really any entertainment for that matter.
So if you had to give advice to someone who's interested in getting into wrestling, they're not already there yet, untrained, completely just like, this is something I'd want to do or try, what would you tell them?
Don't do it.
You're not the first person to say that. I'm going to tell you. There have been several others.
I think that the tone of this has been very positive, and you know, and I don't want to try to highlight negatives, but I will say that it's a lot of work. You're going to piss off members of your family. You're going to piss off any romantic partners that you may have. You're going to create problems potentially with jobs. You're certainly going to have problems with money. But if you're smart and you keep yourself under, you know, distinct, responsible behavior as much as you can while still enjoying the hell out of this, it's an amazing ride. You know, there's a lot that you can get out of the pro wrestling business, and it's you know, it's about making the effort and understanding that you're going to have to do a lot to be able to do this. You know, you're going to have to work out all the time. You're going to have to eat right. You're going to have to train. You're going to have to go to wrestling school and then keep going back to wrestling school on a regular basis to practice, to learn, to tune up. You know, you're going to have to travel. You're going to have to, you know, keep your driver's license fucking clean. That's a big one. You're going to have to be able to put in the miles and, you know, make friends and be confident and step outside of yourself, because those are the kind of things that are going to get you success. You know, there's a rare person who's an amazing athlete who gets picked up. The rest of us have to grind it out. I certainly wasn't an amazing athlete. I'm still not an amazing athlete. But it's about grinding it out and working. And if you work hard and you keep putting the effort in and you make good connections while you network, you know, that's the keys, and that's what you have to worry about. So get in shape, go to wrestling school, understand that this is going to be constant effort for however long that you decide to do it.
Now, I put everybody on the spot with this question, and I'm going to wrap up with this one. If you had to change one thing in wrestling, whether it's backstage, whether it's the audience perception, whether it's about TV, in the ring, whatever the case is, if you had to change one thing, what would it be?
Professional standard. I think one of the biggest problems in wrestling is that there is an occasional lack of professional standard. Don't run a show if you don't have the money to pay everybody on the show before the show ever starts. Don't run the show if you're missing a key component, like a ring announcer that knows what they're doing, referees that are trained, people that you know how to run a show. Don't assume that just because you're a fan that you can book a show, that you can promote a show. Bring people in that know what they're doing. Keep a professional standard, because otherwise you're not going to have a good show, period. There isn't a way to just throw money at something and get better. You have to understand that you need people with experience. You need people to understand what they're doing. You need people who have some background actually doing it. You wouldn't hire someone to build your house who had never built a house before. So the same thing goes for pro wrestling. Like, if you've never done it and you are interested in it, that's fine. But understand that you may need to run the money side of things and the business side of things, provided that you actually know how to do that. and bring people in who know how to do that. And the same thing goes for the wrestlers on the show. Don't go cheap. Hire people that know what they're doing. Understand that the show may cost you a good bit of money, but the quality is going to be there, and that's what you want to bring to the table. And I think wrestling has improved quality-wise quite a bit, at least in the states that I work most often, and really anywhere in the country. But I also think that there's still work to be done, and it could be tuned up more. So the one thing in wrestling that I would change is maintaining a professional standard. It should be there, and I think it's the one thing that's missing on a regular basis.
Well, and that's a fantastic answer because I think it covers so many of the other things I've heard. Some guys have said, fix the pay. Some guys have said, fix the backstage bullying and like all this other stuff. So I think that does, like professionalism, is such an important thing. Now I want to give you an opportunity to promote anything you want, whether it's promotions, whether it's your social media, anything you want to put out there that you want people to check out.
Most of my social media is connected with Leon Scott. We've got Fest Wrestling July 28th, Christmas in July. It's going to be a great show. Nerd Street Wrestling August 18th. Fest Wrestling's in Gainesville. Nerd Street Wrestling's in Orlando. So please come out and check out what we're doing. I think anyone that loves professional wrestling would enjoy our shows. So please check us out.
Well, Leon, thank you so much for joining me. I know you got a show to get to yourself, but thanks for coming out.
Appreciate it, Ken.